Today, we are talking about how to hire a great team, how to find great talent, how to recruit them, how to headhunt them and encourage them to join your company. My guest today is Kael Campbell. I'll tell you more about them in a second, so stay tuned.
Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we feature top entrepreneurs, business leaders, and thought leaders and ask them how they built key relationships to get where they are today. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show. You know, every week I get to talk with smart CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of all kinds of companies, from Netflix to Kinko's, Grubhub, LendingTree, you name it. Go check out our archives because we've got some great ones there. And if you're interested more on this topic, I'm sure you'll find some for you. And of course, this episode brought to you by Rise25, my company where we help B2B businesses get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. And as I mentioned, my guest today, Kael Campbell. He is the president of Red Seal Recruiting, located up in the Vancouver, Canada area. He's a father. He's an entrepreneur. As I mentioned, he's a recruiting and talent expert and headhunter. He helps other companies to drive revenue by getting the right people in the right jobs. They're specialized in manufacturing and mining and construction clients. And so we're going to talk all about these sorts of strategies for your company. And first of all, Kael, such a pleasure having you here today. And I love to ask people about how they were as a kid and the little entrepreneurial side hustles that they had. And you had an interesting combination of different ones. There was a bike shop, there was trading baseball cards, and there was, of course, selling beer and marijuana. Those all naturally go together, especially under one roof. I imagine you had a corner shop, but tell us about those.
Yeah, no, if I envision the perfect bike shop, it probably would include those for a lot of people. But
absolutely.
I've been on the sober train for the last 6 years since having kids, so I can't say that is a great fallback plan for me. But yeah, when I was young, I had lots of ideas and yeah, tried a lot of things. My parents were entrepreneurs, and I was part of their entrepreneurial journey and started mine early. But did go off and get jobs. But really, it was a neat thing, kind of seeing the value, being able to brew beer and sell it. I wasn't quite of age, but yeah, really experimenting with things I'm still interested in, but haven't decided to go down those road. I know lots of friends who have breweries, and it's a great business. We have clients who are some of the larger commercial marijuana growers in Canada. Not my business. I'm glad I'm not involved in that side of the business, but finding the talent to run those large growing operations, is something I still do. And it's nice to have a little bit of a background in it.
Yeah, you know enough to be dangerous, I guess. I want to hear about these parents that were entrepreneurial. I had a roommate in college that started brewing beer, stunk like hell. It's just a horrible smell in the house. And I remember like the first batch he did, the person who was mentoring him said, okay, after about 2 weeks, it'll start to have the carbonation in it. After about 4 weeks, you can start to drink it maybe, but better to wait until 6 weeks. And this roommate of mine had drank all the beer before the second week. So probably not the best line of work for him to go into. But so both your parents were entrepreneurial. What kind of companies or businesses did they have?
Yeah, so my dad built log homes and was a kind of a bush pilot, mineral explorer, right? So he was a geologist, professional engineer, but he had claims up in the northern BC, kind of close to the Yukon, and did some work in the south as well. And he had his own company, so kind of a small stock mining company, and yeah, was an amazing pilot, but also developed properties which were then sold or had investments made by larger mining firms. So really got a small sense of that whole industry, which is one of the biggest in North America and in the world, the mining industry. And it was great to kind of go on journeys with him. I was even packing rocks in a rucksack and using an axe to do claim posts, something that nobody has done in 25 years. But it was great as a kid. You learned what real work was.
That is probably, I imagine sounds more glamorous than it actually is, but sounds like the most adventurous childhood of all time, like flying with your dad in a plane out into the backwoods and then trying to find diamonds and gold.
Yeah, no, it really was like you look at what experiences you can give your kids, and that's like something we would pay for often, growing up in cities and stuff. But that was kind of what we did: land on a lake, set up camp, and then head off into the bush, right? And
Wow.
yeah, pretty cool. Like it was before there were any of these, you know, television shows that showed people panning for gold and having gold claims. It was something you'd only really read about in Louis L'Amour, which a lot of people who in our new generation won't even remember books like that. But we had a chance to explore, and I know enough just to be dangerous on the flying front now.
And what was the craziest experience? I'm thinking of like shows like Alone, where people do that out in the wilderness, and there are mountain lions and there are bears and grizzlies and stuff like that. What was the craziest experience you had through all that?
I didn't really, with my dad was great. He was a little bit conservative, especially when flying and stuff. But when I finished and I kind of went out on my own, I did get into commercial fishing. And that was some of the craziest. I was out in a storm one night and the boat was rocking and rolling offshore, and it was straight out of the Dangerous Catch. And, I wasn't at the helm that night, but I'd been at the helm many nights. And I was so tired from doing all the hard work. I said to myself, well, I need a good night's sleep. And if I die, I die. And I just rolled over and went back to sleep, even though it was the craziest storm. And, that is something that, later on and now I know I wasn't in danger, but it was an adventure, like being offshore commercial fishing with one of the greatest experiences, and also had risk. There was a lot more risk. My dad was great. Like there's an expression, there's only old and bold pilots, or there's old or bold pilots. There's not both. Right. So he would be conservative and decide not to fly, where there was times when I was doing mineral exploration with other people, flying in a helicopter, and the visibility was so low. There's so much fog. All you could see was the white water of a creek. And you couldn't even see the trees on the side, but it was whiter than the fog, and the pilot was still flying. Like conditions that I would never recommend anybody ever go into. So I've had some good experiences, but fortunately, when I was young, those were safe. We saw lots of bears, we saw moose, we saw elk, but we never had any near misses.
That's good. And how did that influence you in terms of knowing what you'd want to do when you get older? Did it seem like a given? You're like, I'm going to go out and start a company one day?
I would say that a lot of the world is set up for people to have jobs. University and like even entrepreneurial courses in university are not really set up in colleges, not really set up to actually push you and take the leap. And, I had seen my dad kind of make that leap and strike out and change as well. So I don't think I ever had that fear of, oh, I got to have a job. Right. And I think that really influenced me, that, I know I can start a new business because I've seen him do it a few times. Right. So, I think it really influenced how I think. And, I do want to leave that for my kids, because I don't think there's anything worse for somebody's morale than saying, I got to stay in this job I don't want to be in. Right. And, having that entrepreneurial option in your pocket, I think is good for anybody.
Which of course relates to what you do now. But before we get to that, I want to ask about the next chapter I was going to cover, which seems a little less adventurous given your childhood, but you actually rode a bike through Cuba and South America. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was in a little bit of a transition kind of in my mid-20s, and I was living in a big city and kind of being a part of the concrete jungle in the system. And, I said, I'm going to take a break. I've stopped smiling. I had an affinity for red wine, which I did kind of pick up and keep going in Argentina. But I basically said, I'm going to take a break. And I grabbed a mountain bike, always had a passion for cycling, and flew into Cuba mountain biked around the whole country, got a chance to learn a bit of salsa, learn the culture, understand about their version of communism, and then go on to South America afterwards. And it was great. Like physically, it was a great experience. And also learning about the people, getting my Spanish better. It's not where I'd like it to be now, but amazing chance to see different countries and really get to know people as well. Build some lifelong friendships too.
And we were chatting before this, and you said that in part inspired you to start your recruiting company when you got back. Unpack that a little bit for us. How did being off the grid like that, going mountain biking around Cuba and South America, inspire you to start a recruiting company?
Yeah. So, I mean, anytime I was working, I was thinking about why are people in their jobs. But even when I was cycling, and meeting people, whether it was that they were at a hotel or they were running a service business or another entrepreneur that I met on the plane, I was like, okay, why are people doing what they're doing? That was always something that intrigued me. And being able to be off and have the time to think when you're touring, like there was no podcast in your ear. You didn't have an iPhone. You might have had a Walkman, but I mean, literally, there are hundreds of kilometers, hundreds of miles of just
thinking,
pedaling and exploring and just really absorbing things. So, I didn't have an aha moment, but when I came back, I was like, man, I do want to be free, right? And I want to help people, and I do want to go on a journey. And definitely entrepreneurship, when I came back, was big on what I was looking for. And I really thought about, okay, where can I have the most impact? And I'd known that in my jobs, recruitment had been a small part of it, but it also been a big spark of joy, right? When you get that manager in place and the team is happy and you can see the stress levels come down on people. Great experience.
But as you said, this had been a very small part of what you'd done, and it's not like you peeled off from being partner in a different recruiting agency and then started a new one, so you knew exactly how to do it. So I'm kind of a little fascinated by this. But what was those early days like? Were you kind of figuring out everything from how we price our services to where I get clients to hire me to do this? What was the early days like?
Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't have a preset idea of this is the way it should be, right? So I didn't learn from one person. Definitely the market survey was always key. Getting on the phone and calling people and saying, hey, are you paying for a service now? What does it look like? What are you happy with? And really doing that market research was key. But also being able to build a playbook, because it was really in flux. Like 2004, we didn't have smartphones yet. I can't remember what year the iPhone launched, but I do remember.
07, yeah.
07. I remember when the first candidate had their smartphone and they were calling me and they're like, I'm on your website, but I can't send you my resume. I'm like, oh, this is going to change things, right? Because it used to be that, people would email in only. Before then it was fax. And, we used to have filing cabinets, right? Mm-hmm. So there was this transition to, a new era. And I was always able to think, I wasn't set in an old way. In HR, we used to do something called post and pray. Posted a job on a website or in a newspaper and pray that somebody would apply. And when you go into recruitment and headhunting, you're really going out to find the people who are currently employed and not really looking, right? So that 30, 40% of the market is really who you're going after. And I didn't have kind of any preset way. I've got to cold call people and say, hey, you got to take my call because I'm the expert in this, right? I had to develop my own way of cold calling, closing potential candidates and clients. So it was a good experience to kind of have a bit of understanding of what people needed, but not say, hey, this is the way it's going to be. Because in 2004, a lot of the top people in the industry who are trainers are still trainers in 2023. And I'm like, I don't think they've innovated that much. And we've got to innovate every single year, right? That's part of being an entrepreneur.
How much does technology change the game now? I mean, now I wonder even if there's some people who don't have a resume because they just say, well, it's on the internet, it's on LinkedIn, or I have an about page or something like that. And then of course there's multimedia, there's video, you can do Zoom interviews. How is technology affecting the profession?
Oh, I mean, huge changes, everything from AI to voice and video. One of my team has just done a beautiful presentation of candidates who, probably 3 years ago, it would have taken just a ton of time, but things like Canva and smartphones, just video is getting so much better that if you can't say it in 1 to 2 pages, really one page, you can say it in video and have it instantaneously in front of your target employer, right? So with video and audio, huge changes. I actually don't even want my client to be reading a resume on their smartphone. So we actually send them the person's voice, right? Like right out of the horse's mouth, right? Because if somebody's looking for, a great person on the PR or the podcasting front, you can send a resume, but if you can send somebody that voice and hear, the ins and outs of whatever their areas of expertise is, it's so much better than us translating it or having it fit on a resume. So yeah, with video and audio, there's so many better ways to bring people information that they can consume it the way they want, right? Because
yeah, and the professions you're working with are manufacturing, mining, construction, engineering. These are trades. These are not, I imagine a lot of the roles are not used to multimedia production quality, stuff like that. So how much are you having to coach up the candidates that you're working with on how to present well in an audio file that you're going to be sending to a potential employer?
Yeah, that's something we got to do every day. Fortunately, I mean, things are just so much better, right? The amount of people with high-speed internet connections, or a good camera phone, or a good video phone on their laptop, or camera on their laptop, it's so prevalent. But we have to be able to edit and embed stuff and really make it consumable for our clients. And there are AI tools, right? Like if somebody says, "Oh, I need this niche of skills," we don't need to be experts in it. We can use AI to help us figure out what the good questions are, maybe find alternative job titles, because what somebody is in California might be titled completely different in Philadelphia or in Florida and Miami. Because even though like we've got this big country, people have different names for the same job title just in the next state, right? So there's lots of things we can do to kind of make it work and really do the transition. And yeah, we got to coach people. We do have some aspects that we send to people and do it yourself, but I expect my team to be able to, like, hey, the way you're approaching this, I'm fine with it. But if we're doing a panel in front of 4 or 5 decision makers, you're gonna have to up your game, right? Like,
right.
What might have worked at company Z where you're working now is not going to work at company Y, where you want to be, where you're going to get that raise and have those promotional opportunities.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting how much you can, connect with people over that. Like I just got back from, you and I are both in Entrepreneurs Organization. And I just got back from this EMP program back east. A bunch of the people there I'd never seen in person before, but I felt like I already knew them pretty well because we'd connected over video previously. One interesting observation I just want to reflect on for you. When I was there, a couple of people reflected to me on the fact that when I was growing up, my father was a TV news reporter. So he worked in media, television. And here I find myself in new media, working in the podcast world. And a couple of people reflected on that here you are, you're working in media. You are looking for a diamond in the rough, literally working for mining companies. And you already shared with us that as a kid, you were going out and doing that as a kid. How much do you think that affected you and ended up kind of determining the profession that you ended up in?
Yeah, I use that analogy of finding a gold seam. And that's an idea that you might find a little crack in the rock with a little bit of gold in it. Mm-hmm. But if you follow that seam, it could widen up, or you can continue it and really find a lot of what you're looking for. And I get that. We always have had a toll-free number on our website, right? And I would get a call, and talk to somebody and like within 30 seconds, I'm like, oh, this is exactly who I want. But they don't have a resume. They're in the middle of traveling and they've just reached out. And to change that phone call into a seam, not just one guy, but 10 or 15 guys is really a talent that, I think it's got an analogy compared to what my dad used to do, but it's also a new way of mining for talent. And really we're managed to take, over 10 guys from, a company like Florida Power and Light and transition them to our employer. Right. And it, we charge a lot for what we do, but that actually amount of money they make compared to what a recruiter makes is insane. They do really well. And, we're helping them get better lives. I think one of them recently, he let me know he's made an additional $1 million in the last 10 years at his new employer.
Wow.
And, really we mine that seam. I got the phone call and, I'm like, okay, great. Let's connect. We managed to place one person, but then we turn that into like 13 or 14 other people. And that's really part of what a good recruiter does. Not think of it as a one-time transaction. It's like, I'm going to have a relationship with this person and maybe everybody they know or one or two people they know. Right. So it's really an analogy I like to think of is mining that gold seam and finding multiple people. Because even if you're just recruiting one person, you're like, oh, what does your wife do? You're thinking about, is she thinking about making a move? And there's something called a twofer, 2 for 1, right? You end up placing two people when you're really only recruiting one. And that happens a lot because it used to be people didn't meet online. I met my wife online, but a lot of people used to meet at work or within their industry group, right? So you'd be more likely to place, if you're a medical recruiter, to place a husband and wife, right? If you're in medical recruitment. And that used to be so common.
Yeah. Or I've seen multiple times you see where someone's like a professor, a husband, wife, or a professor, and if they want to move to a different university, it's a 2 for 1. Like they really, the other one has to get a job at the same university or at least in the same city, which is not easy to do.
Yeah. But you're probably best suited to do it with a recruiter, because if you're in the educational and medical space, they'll be able to connect with all the decision makers, where the individual, if they were just looking at a job, they might be like, oh, I'm going to check on the website, see if anything's available. And it's that hidden job where it's like somebody's going to quit, has quit, or they're thinking about adding budget, and you can get that person in front of the decision maker, and it makes a big difference, and it saves the placement, right?
Right. So
trying to move somebody. Yeah.
There are other more broad, generic recruiting firms out there. Just looking at what you do, it looks very niched by comparison, right? Manufacturing, mining, construction, and yet those each in themselves can be large industries. Construction in North America, huge, right? Mining, North America, huge. Is that a tension for you to kind of like determine, like, do we stay in, like, for example, not just manufacturing, but like some specific type of manufacturing versus being open to opportunities in these other industries?
Yeah, it's interesting. Right now, there's a kind of shift in the economy. Like employment's still high, but some companies are really slashed budgets, whether it's for recruitment or marketing, whatever it is. And we're fortunate that we service multiple industries. So some of our industry groups are down because they're faced with cost overruns. They might have been planning to build a tech park and the tech industry is pulling back, right? So there's shifts, but our candidate base can often shift as well, right? So a project manager who's worked in mining or construction or manufacturing has a lot of transferable skills, where if they were to make a jump to high tech, some of their skills would transfer, but not easily between those industries. So those industries always have some movement of employment between them. And, it's a really good context where if it's either running 24/7 or, there's mechanical parts to it, construction, material inputs, that's something we service, where if somebody says, hey, can you help me with my recruitment firm or my consulting firm or my, digital marketing agency, I'll be like, I could probably help. I've got some expertise, but not as deep an expertise that would help those other niches that we're really
Yeah.
focused on.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you've had this company for about 20 years now. No doubt you've seen some ups and downs. Probably 07, 08, that time period where there was an economic downturn, the pandemic in March of 2020. What was that like for you during the downturn of the pandemic? And of course, we're recording this in 2023. Very weird economy right now, as you alluded to a second ago. But what are some of those? What's that been like for you during these kind of downturns, especially running a recruiting firm? Because I'm sure when times are great, they're great. When times are down and no one's hiring, that can be a struggle.
Yeah, it's difficult from a team perspective and individually. We're fortunate that we're diversified, so we have orders, which is good, but those orders are hard to fill right now. There's a new minimum wage. I like to say it's about 80,000 is really what it takes to get people to switch jobs right now. So, in past recessions, there were mass layoffs, but right now we're at high employment levels in most areas. There's some pockets of unemployment, some professions that are hurting, but it's really an interesting time. And we're also finding that there's clients that really benefit. The ROI, the improvement in their balance sheet by finding that one person is still there, right? So we're still able to get the orders. And from a team perspective, it's hard, right? When you're expecting to knock things out of the park, right? Whenever you get an order from a client, right? And recruitment, it's not like that. Your candidates that we have 130,000 that we've worked with in the past. They don't all want to move. And right now, because of mortgage rates, high cost of rentals, even less want to move, right? So there's this resistance to switch jobs. So it's tough on a team, but it's a great opportunity to say, hey, what can we do better, right? Like we're not flying out, getting 10 new job orders from a client. So we're figuring out what we can do better, where we can add in maybe some automation, but not make our service worse, right? There's I think a big rush when sales are down to say, oh, can we do all these multi-point outreaches and outsource our sales process? We're like, we don't have to be that, I'd say reactionary, but we can make improvements that really help our clients. And we've got the capacity. Cash flow is a bit of a pain right now, but we have great long-term customers we're continuing to service, and I'm probably twice as thankful for the small orders as I might have been last year. But that's ups and downs of business, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then, do you think because of the industries that you're in, that you're, I don't know if immune is the right word, but insulated from this new onslaught of technology? Everyone's talking about AI and how that's going to affect every industry under the sun. Or do you think that mining, construction, manufacturing, these areas are going to be dramatically impacted by AI and other new technologies? And maybe it is already, because maybe they're already hiring an AI expert to come in and help with digital transformation of sort.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there's going to be changes, but the big thing is a lot of these industries require something physical, right? So you can make improvements, but really that physical component, things still need to be moved. And as much as we say, there's going to be self-driving cars, we heard there was going to be self-driving cars 2 years ago, and 4 years ago, and 6 years ago. But it takes a long time to get even something as repetitive as driving and turning left and driving on a highway right. And when you're taking a mining environment, there is going to be automation that happens, but it's hard. It's really hard, and it's going to take more and more inputs of technology where it's not just I'm going to write this and everything's going to run. It's a mining environment or a construction environment. They get dirty, sensors get covered. They have to have more and more automation that make sure that automation works and those systems. So I think we're pretty well insulated. Mining is one of the areas, especially on the driver side. We're not involved in driver recruitment, but they're looking at opportunities to have automated trucks. They've got automated drill rigs, but then you still need somebody who fixes and maintains those somebody who's an expert in programming them, somebody who's an expert in figuring out why the Wi-Fi isn't working when you're, exploring, thousands of kilometers away from a big city, right? So I think, there's going to be an impact. But the big thing that people are working in is the data. How can we make large transformational improvements? And the big companies are trying, but their budget gets shifted. They might cut some of their team members, and hopefully those team members will bounce back and start a new startup that'll help service that industry better. Because definitely construction, manufacturing, mining, they all need automation and ways to do things better and cheaper as well, because everything is more expensive than it used to be, as we all know right now.
Yeah. Now, a lot of times when you see a company has been around for 20 years and someone who's been in their industry for a while, you see when that technology comes along, people kind of stick their head in the sand, or they keep on doing things the way that they are. They say, that's not going to impact me. You actually have gone the other direction in terms of video production. You and I have talked previously about embracing YouTube, which is the number 2 search engine out there. It's a massive channel. You got a new hiring and firing YouTube channel that you built, some other hobby podcast, not podcast, but hobby YouTube channels that you built as well. So talk a little bit about that, how you've kind of embraced that from a recruiting standpoint.
Yeah, so I've always been big on video, but kind of making that leap and making it a habit had always been a bit of a challenge. So, but really in the last year and a half, 2 years, I've been not only using that video camera we're all carrying in our pocket, but getting a little bit better at producing video using other technology, trying out drones. And yeah, I mean, YouTube is an amazing search engine, and people are looking for things, right? So some entrepreneurs I know that we were talking, they're like, oh, Kael, I mean, you really help people, entrepreneurs figure out how to save money and, how to hire better. And I'm like, yeah, I should be kind of sharing that more. And there's lots of fluffy recruiters on YouTube. And I was like, oh, how can I come up with, something that helps service my clients? And I chose hiring and firing. And somebody's like, oh, firing, that's harsh. I'm like, perfect. You got to have a bit of a hard edge to kind of break through the clutter and be able to talk about things like firing, right? When there's up swings and down swings. And even when things are going well, it's okay to transition people out of your organization when it is firing. You can dress it up and say we parted ways. I'm going to give people a reference. I'm always happy to give almost anybody a reference, because I believe that there's an employer out there for everybody. Just might not be me. It might not be one of my clients, right? So YouTube allows us to give those messages to people and them to search it out, right? If they're looking for a way to transition out an employee, a decision of whether or not to continue somebody on, you can speak to that on YouTube. And just the audience breadth on YouTube is amazing, right? Lots of people are going to be watching Mr. Beast and spending their time being entertained. But also, if they see something that hits one of their passions or one of their struggles, they'll watch it there as well, right? So I think it's great. And the SEO components of it are amazing, because search engine optimization, you can do your website, but if you have a video that pops up and somebody's looking for more than like a 1-paragraph explanation, they'll probably click on the YouTube link to listen to it and watch it rather than read through and scroll on their phone.
Yeah. All right. Last question. So I'm a big fan of gratitude. I'm grateful to you for giving us your time here today, sharing some of your strategies, ideas, wisdom. Who would you shout out to and thank them for helping you? And particularly love to hear about peers and contemporaries that have helped you along the way in your journey. Who would you want to thank?
I definitely have a group going into COVID. That all hiring was on hold. I think we had maybe 10 orders, but they were very weak. Let's put it that way. And I had been connecting with people in the entrepreneurs organization who were recruiters, and I was able to kind of activate that network and build a group of about 12 entrepreneurs who we really came together and said, where is our expertise in recruitment and headhunting, and how can we share that and get through this, right? So Dave Bacon and Steven Ziegler, two amazing EOers, just came back from Colorado. They hosted us in Denver and Vail, and really just amazing entrepreneurs. One on the tech recruitment side in the tech space, really built into that space, Dave Bacon, and then Steven Ziegler, just amazing on the executive search side, can really find those leaders, make sure they're a good fit for a company, and really just amazing athletes and family men who I really respect. And yeah, it was great to spend more time in the state of Colorado because I have family there. And it was great to kind of get immersed, see their businesses more, understand kind of their struggles and growth opportunities, and see them as athlete and family men as well. It was a great experience.
Kael, this has been such a pleasure. Where can people go to learn more about you and connect with you? Check out more about Red Seal Recruiting and your hiring and firing YouTube channel.
Yeah, so definitely LinkedIn is easy to find me, Kael Campbell. But also, just hiring and firing on YouTube. Two great ways to kind of see me or get a hold of me. I'm on everything else as well, active, but really LinkedIn is kind of the number one source. But if you're not on there, you're probably on YouTube, which is great, right? I've also got a FMB, Fishing Means Business, which is my passion. I'm going to be out there catching salmon, halibut, tuna, and stuff. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners who are into that as well. So find me there.
Cool, Kael. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.